Actually, before I get to the questions, I do want to touch upon two topics which really relate to the two holidays that are coming up. One of them is maybe more known than the other, but this coming Thursday night and Friday is the holiday called the holiday of Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. It is a special holiday in the calendar. In fact, some eat matzah to commemorate this holiday, to celebrate it. But it is a holiday that is rooted in the Torah. It is the story of some Jews who came to Moses complaining, as we always do, right? We are professionals at complaining. But they had a reason, a good reason for which to complain. They came to Moses shortly after the first Passover, after the grand exodus from Egypt. And they said, look, we were far away, or we were impure and we could not participate in the Paschal Lamb ceremony. And we still want to celebrate Passover. We heard they had such a great time. We want to have a great time too, but we weren't there. Moses did not know what to do. And he said, let me ask God. This is all in the Torah, in the portion of Behalotcha, in the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. God comes back to Moses and says, they are allowed to have their own Passover. Their complaint is legitimate. So tell them that they should have a second Passover, which will be their first, but it'll be a second Passover for the Jewish people, exactly a month after Passover. This coming Thursday night and Friday is exactly a month after Passover, in which we celebrate the second Passover that was given to the Jewish people who were not able to be at the first Passover. Now, some of them, everyone had a different excuse. Some were far away, they weren't there. That's what it says. Some of them were impure and therefore could not partake in the Paschal Lamb because you needed to be pure for that. Some maybe were there but not there. Some of us are sometimes when we go to events, we're there but not there, right? So they wanted to celebrate a second Passover, and God gives them that permission and that encouragement. But I think it is the spirit of the day that we all should connect to. The spirit of the day is God saying to those people, but to all of us indirectly, that he believes in second chances, that it's never too late, that if you failed or you were absent the first time, you'll still have a second time to make up for it. And if God believes in second chances, even more so should we. Sometimes we don't give ourselves second chances. Sometimes we don't give others second chances. But we should know that for God, it's never too late. By the way, that's what the concept of teshuvah, which is maybe one of the most important concepts of Judaism, is founded on. Teshuvah means does not just mean repentance, it means return. We've spoken about this a few times. But God believes that even if you've sinned, even if you've deviated, you can always return. It's really never too late, to the point that even Jewish law says to us that if someone is on his deathbed and he's been a horrible person his whole life, he can still do teshuvah until it's his last breath. He can still do teshuvah. That's why we've incorporated, and I know I'm deviating here a little bit, but the Jewish custom that anyone who, God forbid, is on a deathbed should say the confession prayer, a prayer that is called the vidui prayer, a prayer that basically says, God, I'm doing teshuvah. You've given me a second chance, or maybe this is my 100th chance or 1,000th chance, but I'm doing teshuvah, I'm repenting. And in fact, it also says that one who truly repents, has true remorse, and accepts upon himself never to do those sins again, God erases those sins from his life record. It's not a part of him anymore, not shown to him in the world to come. He doesn't get punished for that. That's the power of teshuvah, which again stems from the spirit of this second Passover, and that is that it's never too late. That's one holiday coming up, again Thursday night and Friday. The other one coming up is Monday night and Tuesday. We'll have a big celebration here on Monday night, and across the world people light bonfires. You may be familiar with that custom on Monday night. We'll light a bonfire here too, and we'll celebrate. The reason we light a bonfire and the reason this day is so special is because it is the yahrzeit, it is the day of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived some 2,000 years ago. He was the author of the Zohar, of the book of the Zohar, the foremost book of Kabbalah, the one that really introduced Kabbalah to the Jewish world, but also was maybe one of the greatest lights of the Jewish people in that era, maybe in all eras, but particularly in that era because he lived shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple, in which the state of the Jewish people was at its lowest. Imagine, it was after Holocaust, almost like 1950. He lived in the 1950 of the time. It was after a Holocaust that took place by the Romans, after the destruction of the temple, after the Jews were exiled to Babylon. They couldn't live in Israel anymore, except for the selected few. And he came and he revived the Jewish people, breathed in them a new spirit, taught them Kabbalah, the inner meaning of the Torah, that is relevant, that is accessible, that is soulful. And we have those teachings until this very day. This is also why we light a bonfire, not just a yahrzeit candle. Usually you light a yahrzeit candle for the passing of someone because everyone is a light. And as King Solomon says in the book of Proverbs, the soul is like a candle. So to represent the candle, the light that the deceased was and continues to be, we light a yahrzeit candle. But this man was a giant candle, a giant light. So we light a big bonfire. In fact, there are fire hazards everywhere in Israel every year. It's a big thing, but it comes to again to commemorate this massive light that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was. This is also the day in which the plague that we spoke about 2 weeks ago ended. Some 24,000 students during that time period too died in a plague. They were all the students of Rabbi Akiva, and that plague ended on Lag Baomer, on the 33rd day of the Omer. And we therefore also commemorate that day. It's a day of renewal, of reset, a day in which the maybe negative destiny changes into a positive one. And it is a day, practically speaking, in which also the mourning customs for many Jews, some continue the mourning customs until the eve of Shavuot, but for many Jews, the mourning customs end. Then we're allowed to get a haircut, we're allowed to get married from that day on, and the customs that we spoke about 2 weeks ago. But that's the day of Lag BaOmer, a day when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's soul comes down to this world and blesses all of us. He had tremendous powers, miraculous powers. Many stories are told about him, but really he was the leader of the Jewish people of the time and continues to stand as one of the most, impactful leaders that the Jewish people have had. That's Lag BaOmer. And now we can get to the questions. So I'm going to go straight to a question that was sent. Can you speak about the Hebrew word tochacha, right? I'd like to learn more about that word and ways to say difficult things better. So it's a great question. The word tochacha really comes from one of the biblical commandments that we have, one of the 613 that we read about just in last week's portion. Last week's portion says, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha, which means, and that's what tochacha means, you should rebuke your fellow. You should criticize him with constructive criticism. That's what rebuke means. That's what tochacha, that Hebrew word, means. But it's interesting to note that it comes smack in the middle of a verse that starts with one commandment and ends with another commandment. That commandment to rebuke our fellow if we see our fellow doing something wrong comes as a sandwich. The first commandment in that verse is Lo tisna et achicha bilvavcha. You should not hate your fellow in your heart. You should not carry hatred in your heart. The last commandment in that verse is Velo tisa alav chet, that you cannot consider your fellow as sinful. Right? You cannot relate a sin to your fellow. That's literally what this means. In between, you have this commandment, rebuke your fellow. But it comes in between those two for a very specific reason. God designed that verse in a very purposeful way. And the purpose is that you can only rebuke if you do not hate your brother. Very often our rebuke comes from hate, comes from jealousy, comes from negativity. So if you have that in your heart, you're not allowed to rebuke. But even after you've rebuked your fellow, let's say you don't have that in your heart. You fulfilled the first part of the verse. You don't hate your fellow. You're doing this purely out of love. You want to rebuke fellow because you love them. Not out of hatred, not of any negative feelings. Still, after you've rebuked him, you still have to consider him innocent. You have to say to yourself, I've rebuked him. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I saw the whole situation in the wrong way. Because again, the last commandment of that verse is Lo tisa alav chet. You cannot consider him sinful. So even after you've rebuked him, you are saying to yourself, well, maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I rebuked him just because I'm seeing things in a very narrow way. Maybe the situation is different, and therefore I still consider him very innocent. So a rebuke is not the regular rebuke that you see in conversations between people in the news or wherever it may be. That type of rebuke, I think, is very rare. A rebuke that comes first completely out of love, and a rebuke in which you are willing to confess that you may be wrong, that you're seeing the situation and you're missing the point. That's the type of rebuke that God wants you to give. That's the only type of rebuke that you're allowed to give. That's what tochacha really means. Now, how do you do that? I think, first of all, again, asking yourself, am I speaking now just out of ego, out of my own insecurities, or am I speaking because I really love the person? But let's say you've overcome that hurdle. Yes, you love that person. Your ego's not in the way. It's really out of pure care. You have to ask yourself, am I seeing the full context? Because very often we do not know what the full context is. Sometimes people behave in certain ways, not because they meant to behave in certain ways, but because maybe they come from a place that we can't see. Maybe they just had a fight with someone, with their spouse. Maybe they just lost someone in their lives. Maybe they just went through a crisis that we just simply don't know about. Very often the behavior is really reflective of something much deeper, and therefore never answer a question, but answer the person behind the question, as we've spoken about. So you have to look at the entire context. If you know the entire context, and you can see that this person is really innocent, because that's the last part of the verse, then you can go and rebuke. Otherwise, maybe keep your mouth shut. Maybe you shouldn't say anything, which is also a commandment, that you should keep quiet when you don't know. And seldom do we know. Most cases, we really don't know. So now, if you've checked all these boxes and you still feel like you can rebuke, then that rebuke is allowed. You'll know if you checked the boxes and if you really followed God's intention by seeing if the rebuke worked. If your rebuke didn't work, maybe you missed the box to check. Because usually if someone really hears someone that loves him and rebukes him in the most loving way, in the most non-judgmental way, usually they listen. If they don't listen, maybe it's your fault, not theirs. You know, there's a great story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and then I'll get to the other questions, about a rabbi who came to, Rabbi Gordon was his name, who lived in New Jersey. He came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he said, look, I really don't know what to do to the president of my congregation, because he's really the most disconnected Jew, if there's such a thing. There's no such thing. Every Jew is connected, but seemingly most disconnected. And I want to rebuke him, but I don't know how to. I don't know what to do. And the Rebbe asked Rabbi Gordon, let me ask you, have you ever been to a Russian sauna? Has anyone been to a Russian sauna here? No? Turkish? Or maybe the Turks do the same. But the Rebbe went on to say that in the Russian sauna, you go to this sauna and you start sweating and it's very hot. And then you come out of the sauna and you have this guy with a fig leaf that is waiting for you. And he asks you before, but usually most people want this. And he starts smacking you on your back. And then you say, please, more, give me more. It feels good, even though you've sweated and all of that. Are you familiar with that? The Turkish saunas do the same thing now. Anyhow, apparently Russian saunas do that. And then the Rebbe went to ask Rabbi Gordon, and he said, let me ask you a question. If someone would come to you with a fig leaf, same type of leaf that they use in Russian saunas, in the middle of the street, and start smacking you with it, would you say, I want more? Or would you react a little bit differently? I would react differently, Rabbi Gordon says. Well, same here. You first have to embrace the person with love, with warmth, with a sauna of the heart. Only then can you take out your fig leaf and rebuke them. If you just rebuke them without that love, it will never work. Do you have a relationship with your president? Do you love him? Do you really give him warmth? Do you give him a Russian sauna? If yes, then you can speak to him. But if not, it's not going to help. It's going to be counterproductive. just like smacking someone with a fig leaf in the middle of the street without that sound. And I think of that quite often. Love must always trump every situation. If I don't have that true love, that true warmth, the fulfillment of those two commandments that follow and come after the commandment to rebuke, then really I shouldn't rebuke at all. That's tochacha. Okay, next question. What does Judaism actually expect from someone who wants to grow spiritually but feels overwhelmed by how much there is to do? It's true. We just said there are 613 commandments in the Torah, so it feels overwhelming. By the way, most of them, I would say most of them, are not applicable today, because a lot of them deal with sacrifices in the temple, for example, with the way one had to behave in the temple. We don't have a Jerusalem temple until Mashiach comes, please God, very soon. And therefore, a lot of these commandments don't apply. A lot of them apply to the way we have to tithe our fruits, for example. Outside of Israel, this commandment doesn't apply. Today, it does apply in Israel, but if you buy oranges from Fry's right here, they probably come from, what, Mexico? Where do they come from? Potatoes come from, I know the lettuce comes from Yuma, Arizona. That I know. But they don't come from Israel. If fruits don't come from Israel, you don't have to tithe fruits. In Israel, they do. So these commandments wouldn't apply to you. So a lot of the commandments don't apply to us, but there are still many commandments, and they feel sometimes very overwhelming. But that's the whole idea. Rabbi Steinsaltz has a book called Teshuvah. And one of the paragraphs, it's a book I would warmly encourage for everyone to read, but one of the paragraphs in that book stays with me, is a paragraph that says, all or nothing, a false illusion. People think they have to do it all. Or if they don't do it all, then I'd rather do nothing, because I don't want to be a middle type of guy. But that's not what Judaism is about. That's not what God wants you to do. God wants you to do one mitzvah. He wants you to grow one step forward. He doesn't want the full 613 commandments. There's a beautiful Mishnah that we say here every day in prayer that says, in the name of the Rabbi Hananiah, the son of Akashia, we said that God wanted to bring merit upon the Jewish people, and therefore he gave them many mitzvahs. But that's not a merit. If you give me many mitzvahs, it's a lot of responsibilities. It does feel overwhelming. But what he's trying to say is that the merit is because God is telling you that you have 613 ways in which to connect with him. So pick one. If he had only given you one, and that one wouldn't suit, it would have been very difficult. But God wants to bring merit upon you. So he gives you 613. Just pick one. And once you've solidified that relationship with that bridge, pick another bridge. The more, just like in a rope, the more the strings, the stronger the rope is. But start with one, and then go to another one, and then go to another one. It's not all or nothing. That's a false illusion in the word of Rabbi Steinsaltz. Just pick one and make it fit you, where you are at the moment, your rhythm, your spiritual journey. And then slowly but surely grow. I've often said that, I wish that there was one thing I could do as a rabbi, is to eliminate the labels that we have in the Jewish nation. You have Reform Jews, Conservative Jews, you have Reconstructionist Jews, you have Orthodox Jews, you have Modern Orthodox Jews, you have Haredi Jews. How many labels do we have? It's like crazy. Think about Humanist Jews. Someone told me the other day that there's, what's it called? Conservadox Jews? Conservadox? Is that what it is? Conservative Orthodox? And conservative, yeah. There's all sorts, and I think there's new labels coming up every single day. Labels belong to meatpacking, to clothes, to things that are non-human. Human beings shouldn't have labels. It's true in education too. When we call our children silly boy or anything like that, we give them labels. That's the worst thing we can do, because then we halt their growth. Then they are placed against their will and they're forced into these boxes. That's who you are. That's it. So if it's true in education, it should be true for the Jewish people. We shouldn't have labels. But I think there's only one label that we can give ourselves, not others. Ourselves. Not Reform Jew, Conservative Jew, these labels, by the way, are new in Jewish history. They're about 300 years old. That's very new. Moses was Orthodox. Queen Esther was conservative. What was she? Like what? Like it didn't exist then because we never believed in that. And for some reason, 300 years ago, maybe because of the emancipation, we came up with these labels. But we should get rid of them. There should only be one label that we should give ourselves, and that is, am I a growing Jew or not? That's a good label to give yourself. A growing. Yeah. As long as you're growing, each in your own way, with your own mitzvah, then you're the ultimate Jew. You're the best Jew in the world. And that is how we can really, not just for the feel-good aspect of it, but really for the divine aspect of it, for the Jewish aspect of it, that's how we can relate to the overwhelming number of mitzvahs that we have to fulfill, because we don't. It's one mitzvah at a time, each according to their own journey. I'll conclude yet with another story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but it's a powerful one. It's a story I think of a lot. It's a story about this young scientist who was 23 years old. He came with a group of other scientists to ask the Rebbe questions about science and religion. The Rebbe would see people at night, and this was a Saturday night when he was given his appointment together with his group. And by the time they entered the room of the Rebbe, it was 2 a.m. on a Saturday night. They started asking the questions. And then this particular scientist, this young man, said, I'm going to stump the Rebbe. I'm going to ask him a question that's impossible to answer. How so? He said, Rebbe, I have a question for you. In your eyes, am I a good Jew? Again, another label. Am I a good Jew? Now, he thought it would stump the Rebbe, because if the Rebbe would say no, then he would have insulted him. He would say yes. He really wasn't connected to Judaism whatsoever, at least seemingly. What would the Rebbe answer? And now the Rebbe is a man of truth. He's not going to lie. He's not just going to say yes for yes' sake to make a person feel good. But the Rebbe, being the Rebbe, responded in such a powerful way. He said, let me ask you a question. How old are you? The young man said, I'm 23 years old. He says, wow, you find yourself in New York City on a Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning as a 23-year-old speaking Judaism with a rabbi. I know a lot of people your age that if they find themselves in New York City on a Saturday night at 2 a.m., they wouldn't be speaking Judaism with the rabbi. There would be many other places. So you're asking me if you're a good Jew? Of course. Right now, you're the best Jew in the world. Now, the Rebbe didn't lie. It's true. It's a matter of direction. What am I doing right now? If right now I'm studying Torah with the rabbi, the greatest rabbi of our generation, at 2 o'clock in the morning in New York City, then you're the best Jew in the world. So it might feel overwhelming sometimes as the word is used here. But as long as we are doing what is right now at this moment, based on our own rhythm, on our own direction, our own journey, then we can not only adjust to this overwhelming feeling, but I think we can live Judaism in the most meaningful and purposeful way. Yes, Janet. Yeah.
One would observe different daily life as a Jew. One question. It just, there seems to be where Orthodox, or who practice more, or however you want to describe them, more observant, would say someone that isn't as observant as them it's the wrong way, or vice versa, or all the different, let's say, labels. And if a Jew is a Jew, does it really matter?
No, not only does it not matter, but I think it's a travesty when people start saying what is right and what is wrong. Yes, it's the Torah. We have rules. We have certain ways of doing things. But just as I wouldn't expect my child to fulfill all the rules because he has his own rhythm right now, he's a child, and even my teenagers and even adult children, I wouldn't expect, because I recognize that everyone has their own rhythm, and therefore telling my child that he's a silly boy or whatever label I choose to put on him is wrong. So too, I think it's wrong to say to people, "Hey, you're wrong. You're X'd out." I think that.
But how are things not acceptable in different reform, conservative? In other words, certain rules are not where, let's say a non-Jew going up on a bima for a child's.
So again, that's a good question. Right. So I think that let's use a metaphor. Which sports game do you like? Basketball, baseball, football, hockey? Okay. Let's go. Let's go to baseball. In baseball, there are rules, right? Baseball, there's 11 players on the team. In baseball, there's a time to pitch, a time to bat. There's the team on the field, the team in the. There's a million rules. Now, I'm not going to change the game of baseball if I'm trying to teach my children the game of baseball. I'm not going to get them a smaller court just to make it easier. A field, sorry. I'm not going to, I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to bend the rules because then I won't be teaching them baseball anymore. It's almost like in basketball, for example. I would tell my child, you know what, let me make the ring a little bit bigger so you can finally get the ball in. I'm not going to do that. That changes the whole game. So in Judaism, there are rules. Yes, there are 613 commandments. There are rules. But in order to teach those rules, I'm not going to tell a child who doesn't know how to hold his bat yet that, oh, you're terrible at baseball. Don't play baseball. You should never do this. No, I'm going to teach him how to play. And I'll understand that he has his own journey, that maybe it's his first day playing baseball. Maybe he still has so many rules to learn. I'm not going to change the book, but I am going to change my perspective on children who don't know yet how to follow all the rules because they're children or because they haven't played baseball yet. Or it could be an older person too, but they've never exposed themselves to the game of baseball. I don't want to change the game of baseball. Otherwise, there's no game anymore. Then Judaism is no longer. If I change the book of Judaism, the book of the Torah, if I change the commandments, then that's it. Within a generation or two, Judaism is gone. Baseball only remains a loved game because it's never been changed. Same with Judaism. Now, the way I teach it, the way I try and bring it to the people is a way in which I have to be very sensitive to where everyone is, to the journey of everybody, to everyone's connection with baseball. And the second I start labeling people, saying, hey, you're a terrible player, hey, you should never play, hey, you're crooked, hey, you don't know how to hold it, then I've killed the people. Baseball will remain in theory, won't be a practical game. Yeah.
As opposed to.
I think all labels are judgmental, aren't they, when they come to human beings?
So what's judgmental about conservative Judaism as a label?
What's judgmental about conservative Judaism as a label? I think all labels are judgmental, except for the growing one, maybe not. But most labels are definitely judgmental. Conservative Judaism, I'm boxing them in the conservative box. What if this person now wants to do more or to do less or to have his own journey? Why am I imposing some way of life onto someone when the way of life should be an ever-growing one? So it's certainly a very, very paralyzing label. Yeah. As the Orthodox one is, as the Reform one is, as all those other labels are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Certainly, race. There's a lot of these questionnaires and have these weirdest questions. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some labels are super neutral. What race depends in what context. Again, it could be neutral. It could be. It's like asking what gender are you, right? It's pretty neutral. It's not like they're not trying to box me into something unless.
You could put human race.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Today maybe it's a little different. Yeah. And
Can't hear you.
on the counting of the Omer. Oh, right. Listen, I mean, again, the baseball game has rules. The basketball game has rules. I think Judaism has rules. I'm going to give you one of the great analogies by the chief rabbi of Israel of some 20 years ago, Rabbi Israel Meir Lau. You may have heard of him. He's a Holocaust survivor. Rabbi Lau, really a giant of our times. But Rabbi Lau tells the story, the metaphorical story. I've shared it in the past, I think, of an Italian taking an Alitalia flight from the heavens, comes down on earth, he lands in Rome. He bumps into someone in the street. He says, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me?" The guy says, "I don't understand your language. Came from a past life." He says, "What do you mean? Is Julius Caesar stole, is Rome stole a big empire?" So what are you talking about? Colosseum is in ruins and Italy is on the verge of bankruptcy. He's so upset, he goes back to heavens. He says, "I don't want to live anymore like a Roman in Rome." Then say he takes a Greek person from ancient times and puts him on what is it called? Air Olympics. Is that what it's called? Olympics airline. That's the official airline of Greece. Olympus. There you go. And he lands in Athens. And again, he stops someone in the street. He says, "Excuse me, I need some help." The guy says, "I don't understand your language." Speaking ancient Greek. It's not the same. He says, "Okay, fine, but just tell me something. Is the temple of Zeus still around? Can I go?" He says, "Well, what are you talking about? It's in ruins too." He says, "Well, is Greece also a superpower?" "No, what are you talking about? We're on the verge of bankruptcy even more than Italy." The guy doesn't want to stay there. He goes back to the heavens. Now take a Jew from ancient times and put him on El Al Airlines and have him land in Tel Aviv, in Ben Gurion. He stopped someone in the street. He says, "Shalom Aleichem." He says, "Aleichem Shalom." "Oh, we speak the same language. Great." He says, "What's your name?" He says, "Moshe." He says, my name is also Moshe. That's amazing. He says, "Can you help me out? I left my tefillin up there in heaven. Can you give me tefillin?" He says, "Of course, yeah." Exact same tefillin. He walks into a synagogue. He sees the mezuzah. He feels at home. He says, "I want to stay here." Now, what enables that continuity? That the tefillin haven't changed, that the mezuzah hasn't changed, that the names haven't changed, that the language hasn't changed. It's miraculous, but it's not so miraculous. It's because we've been so careful about not changing that game. Imagine that 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the game of Judaism would have been changed and it would have been adjusted to the people of the times. Let's make it flexible. Let's change this. Let's move Shabbat to Sunday. Whatever it may be. Moshe would have felt very uncomfortable here. There would have been zero continuity, truly. So we have to preserve the game of baseball, the game of basketball, and the game of Judaism. But when it comes to applying it to the people, we have to be very careful about atochacha, which goes back to that topic, to be very careful about our labeling, shouldn't exist whatsoever. And we should have to be very careful about recognizing that everyone has their own unique spiritual journey that is asked to grow one step at a time. That's it. Okay. Number 3, how do we maintain peace in the home, shalom bayit, and healthy relationships when people in our own families strongly disagree about religion or politics? So it's a good question. It's a question, unfortunately, and I say that with deep sadness, that is more and more prevalent because, I'm sure you know of people like that. I see this all the time. People fighting with their own loved ones, family members, good friends, just because of politics, more politics than religion, I would say. And it has torn apart families. I think I would say that there are 3 very important ingredients. Number 1, to always remember that your family bond is so much more important than anything else. Politics come and go. The family bond forever stays. Focus on the eternal, not on the temporary. And the eternal must be preserved with sanctity. The temporary can be left out of dinner tables. I don't think politics should be a part of, should be part of every discussion, of any discussion whatsoever. And focus on the fact that God chose you to be family, and therefore you've got to preserve that sanctity of the family as much as you can. And that's eternal. The rest is temporary. Number two, I would say that beyond focusing on the family bond, focus on that which unites you, not that which divides you. I think that which unites us, to use the cliche, is so much more than what divides us. So focus on that, and not just focus on that, but entertain that, cultivate that. If what unites you may be sports, baseball, so then so then use that as a unifying factor. Focus on that. Forget politics. And there are deeper things. I think that there are two types of unities. I think one is so much stronger than the other, and therefore that type of unity should be cultivated more than the other. But there's a unity of interest, and that means that you have the interest of baseball, I have the interest of baseball. Great, let's unite. You like good food, I like good food. Let's go to a good restaurant and unite. That's called the unity of interest. But it's not so strong, because if the interest goes away, the unity goes away. But then there's what's called the unity of purpose. I'm united for that which is greater than me and you. Let's go and serve. Let's go to Courtney's place and serve and help the disabled children and adults. That's a unity that is so much stronger than the unity of interest, because it focuses on not me and not you. It focuses on that which is greater than us. And therefore, even if me and you are different, we still have something that's so unifying, something so meaningful, that unites not just our interest or our bodies, but unites our souls. So I would say cultivate those unities of purpose, also the unities of interest, but also unities of purpose. And number three, I think the third ingredient is to include God in the picture. Conflicts, whether they're political conflicts or other types of conflicts, very often come because of ego. When you include God, it diffuses the ego. What it does is that you start asking yourself, would God want me to fight? You start asking yourself, how do I tochacha? How do I rebuke? Start asking yourself what God wants of your relationship. And very often that immediately takes away the negativities. So I think the more we can be aligned with God, the less tension there will be in families. But these are the three ingredients. Okay, last but not least, if someone doesn't feel spiritually inspired by prayer, what are they supposed to do? Just keep saying the words anyway? So we've touched upon this in the past, but I'm going to share the story of Rabbi Steinsaltz, my beloved rabbi. Because I recall how someone once came to him and said, Rabbi, you know, we say the same prayers each and every day in Judaism, 3 times a day. It's the exact same words, same prayers. And it gets very boring, just like this question is. And I don't know what to do. So Rabbi Steinsaltz told him, it's true. The prayers are the same. But you shouldn't be the same every day. And when you are not the same every day, you look at the prayers differently from the perspective that you have today. And since today you're not the same person as yesterday, so you'll have a different perspective and it won't be boring. So the prayers don't change, but you should change. And then Rabbi Steinsaltz, in his own typical way, said to the man, and if you don't change, it's not the prayers that are boring, it's you that is boring. In many ways, it's true. That's the way we have to pray. We have to pray every day. We bring our own perspective. We bring our own pleas. We bring our own, whatever's on our heart that day, to God. And in that way, the prayers really don't become boring. They actually excite us. They elevate us.